I'm Sarina Fazan. Taking a risk, making a difference, and changing the course of your life. Remarkable stories from people defying the odds. You're listening to Trailblazer. Hi, everyone. I'm Sarina Fazan, and welcome to Trailblazer, where you hear from amazing people and their remarkable stories. Joining me right now is one of my dear friends, Stefanos August. Stefanos, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And you're also in the real estate industry, which everybody is talking about real estate right now with this coronavirus crisis and how it's affected the community.
Right.
So tell us about yourself a little bit. Tell us where you work. You've been in the real estate business now for 15 years.
Right. So prior to being a real estate agent, a school teacher, and always started investing early since I was 24. So I always had the knack for it, and that's how I met you too, through the real estate business.
Yes.
So doing the real estate investing and flipping, I decided to get into full time, and I've been doing it for 15 years now.
And what company do you work for right now?
Coastal Properties Group. They're affiliated with Christie's International Realty.
And they're here.
They're
locally,
here
in Tampa, Florida.
In Tampa, Florida. And what's great about this company, I just switched over to them. And after 15 years of being with the same company, and the owner has the vision of conquering the area. So he's swept through Pinellas County, and he's making headway now into South Tampa.
Okay, speaking of conquering the area, though, right now people are really concerned about real estate. I mean, the country was basically shut down and is still, we're just in here in the Tampa community anyway. We're just beginning in phase one. So what does the real estate market look like?
So it's interesting. Prior to the coronavirus, I had several under contract. One didn't even appraise, and during the midst of the coronavirus, the buyer still spent $50,000 over appraisal to secure a place. He's from New York. So, I think a lot of the buyers know this is going to soon pass. The local market here is still moving nicely. What's happened is, best way to describe it is supply and demand. The demand, of course, because of the virus, has dropped, but so has the inventory.
Okay.
So I think we still have a supply and demand issue now. There's just still not abundance of inventory. Monday morning, I'm showing a property off market because begging the seller to sell it because we don't see an abundance of inventory in the South Tampa corridor. So
let's talk about that before we move on to other topics. When you were talking about the inventory is low because, the inventory has been low, but the inventory
is even lower now.
Is even lower because people basically decided not to sell. They were hunkering down in their homes, correct?
For example, a Hyde Park client of mine got relocated to San Diego, and in the midst of this coronavirus, she's not putting her home on the market. And now she got word that she's going to stay put. So I think a lot of people aren't moving right now. And also the fear has come into play, but still that supply and demand is still there. Demand is still high and supply is still low.
But what about the prices, Stefanos? Because prior to this happening, real estate seemed to me anyway, it was booming, right? And I want to talk about the rental market as well, but we're going to get to that.
Sure.
It seemed that I have friends of mine that were so excited about selling their house, moving into a new house.
Did you have them call me yet?
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I needed to have them call you. I'm sorry. They were loyal to another realtor. I apologize. Sorry. But are we seeing prices of properties go down?
I don't feel in the South Tampa quarter there is a good deal to be had, and the investors are still like hawks watching over the market. There's not much inventory. There's not many good deals, period. And things are moving. I just got a waterfront in Sunset Park under contract, in So Water, and it went for a pretty good price.
So just so this isn't limited just to South Tampa and Tampa, just real estate in general in our community.
Right.
Do you feel that I know there's been a huge impact, but you feel we can recover?
I think this is a bump in the road. My thoughts, it's a bump in the road. People, also gone in and filed for forbearances for their mortgages. But I think it's a bump in the road. I think it's going to sweep back in. It's going to, by this time next year, it's going to be a distant memory what happened. Again, things are still moving. $1 million homes to, $100,000 homes. They're all still moving, and the market is reflective of that. They're not going for like they did back in 2008, 2009, 10 for cheap. there's no good deal to be had.
And I want to go back to 2008, 2009, 2010s for, I mean, you could buy houses at that time between $20,000 to $60,000.
My friend Sarina bought houses for $20,000 back then. And how many? Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not seeing those numbers, right?
You're not, nowhere I've seen them. Nope. Mm-mm.
So if you are a property owner and you are contemplating selling your house, should you sell right now?
This is a great time. The rates are still great. And the inventory now is low. Again, had to beg a seller to help me get a cash buyer I have to get into place. And I'm showing it Monday morning. Again, the inventory is low.
So don't wait for a few weeks. I mean, you would suggest if you want to sell your home, go ahead and sell.
I would definitely talk to your agent if it's not me, and look at the local market where you're at and see what kind of inventory exists. But yeah, I would definitely say now the rates are still great. And the lenders are still lending. Another lender, someone told me, oh, well, now if you have in forbearance, it's harder to get a mortgage. Well, of course, you're going to struggle with paying that mortgage. Why would they give you another mortgage? So I think we're just going to move this along at the bump in the road. And this is a great time to put it on the market because there's not much inventory, period.
Well, when you were talking about trying to get a mortgage, and if your mortgage is on forbearance right now, and this may not be your area of expertise, but maybe you can, guide us in the right direction. What do you do at that point? I mean, you talk to your real estate agent, you talk to the lender. I mean, who do you talk to?
Well, I would talk to everyone who has knowledge in the market. But if you're in forbearance, then maybe you shouldn't be in a position to pick up a next place right now. I'd just be very cautious about doing that because it will affect your credit.
And the interest rates though are very low right now too, as well, right? So right now, that's another reason why if you're in the market to buy,
it's a great time.
So
and don't wait until everyone starts listing their home, because that's when you're going to get less for your property.
Right.
That's what we don't have that right now, which is great.
So let's talk about that. So so from buying to selling, because there is not that much inventory. You're saying like right now, if you want to make a move in real estate right now, even though on the outside it might look like, oh gosh, and we are in crisis. I'm not, taking away from that, but right now it might be a good time to make that decision.
Yeah, absolutely. Because there's not an abundance of inventory.
So let's switch gears a bit, and we can come back to this, to the rental market. What is, prior to the coronavirus crisis, the rental market was unbelievable. I mean, you could not find places to rent. And I mean, quite frankly, the prices were really high. So what has this done to the rental market?
Well, I still see that nothing's changed too much. And again, my local niche here with the rental market, I was about to list one in High Park Village, furnished 2-bedroom for $3,800. And in the midst of the corona, I got, multiple offers. So I think still the inventory is still low in the rental market aspect, even with my own personal properties.
Have you found, though, people can still afford to pay the rent, though? I mean, there's so many people that, their jobs are on hiatus, or sadly that they have lost their jobs. I mean, and as far as I can see so far, there of course is protection for the homeowner with the forbearances, but what about protection for people who have the rental homes?
For example, a couple of my own properties, and my mom bought a couple too. Two out of how many we have? About 7 are struggling. So what we did was we talked to them and said, hey, we have the security deposit. Let's take half of that and apply it to April's rent. And we did. And then they have the balance, the next half, they could apply it towards May rent. And one of the tenants said, we'll only take a few $100s of that. So, we had to work all together. But I think with them too, unemployment's going to start to kick in, and hopefully they'll get a job by, next month or two. So that was our solution, taking the security deposit and applying it towards a rent.
But that's a good, solution and some good advice. What other advice would you have? I mean, I think that's great. So just basically talk to your tenant, see if something can be worked out.
Right. Yeah. Or, it depends on everyone's has a different scenario. But actually, I got that advice from a client of mine, and I troubleshot. I called the tenants ahead of time and offered it to them. And 2 of them took me up on my offer. But a lot of my tenants and my mom's, they're very proud too. They don't want to take a handout either, but they did.
Well, it's refreshing to see that you don't feel that the real estate market has taken a huge hit.
Because of that, I think the supply and demand has helped. Now, back you mentioned earlier, 2008, 2009, 10, I think then was different. You had an abundance of inventory. If we had that abundance of inventory issue, we would see it change, prices plummet. But I think people keeping that inventory low is helping out quite a bit.
Well, hopefully, do you think it will stay that way though?
I think so, because even before the coronavirus, local market here, there's still not an abundance of inventory. But if everyone starts throwing their homes up for sale, then you got problems. Back in 2009, I had a listing in Riverview, okay, and there was 9 of the same models on the same street for sale. So then you see prices change and go down. But we're not seeing that.
So hopefully,
I'm not seeing it.
And thank goodness for that, right? So hopefully we don't see a repeat of what happened in 2008, 2009, 2010. Like, I mean, I'm hoping that the economy can recover more quickly than it did then.
I think so. I think because lenders now have gotten wiser. Jumbo loans have restricted, lending. So I think everyone's tightening up a little bit.
So so you said to me that you brought some data with you. What is this data that you brought with you today?
Let me just take a look at some good stuff here.
And in the meantime, as you look, so you were a school teacher for several years. What grade did you teach?
3rd, 4th, and 5th graders.
Oh, and you have twins right now.
Twin 7-year-olds.
Oh, that's awesome. And then you went into real estate. So
But I always dabbled in it too while I was teaching, which was great. So, and just more conversation about, they say 10.5% of the FHA mortgages are now in forbearance. Again, it's just, I think, buying people some time just to get ahead of this for sure. The Fed's in no hurry to raise rates, so rates are still staying low, which is all good news for sure. Oil prices are going down. So again, I don't know if that's good or bad, but just some updates for sure. This is just a meeting we just had this week with Airbnb layoffs. 1,900 people were laid off at Airbnb.
Yeah, so let's actually talk about Airbnbs, because with travel shut down, clearly, or people not really traveling, people aren't staying in Airbnbs.
Right.
So I have some friends that I know that instead of using their places as Airbnbs now, they're opting to rent.
Exactly.
The place out for longer periods of time. Would you suggest that until?
Absolutely. Right. Versus having a house sitting there vacant. Absolutely. Rent it out for a year lease or 6 months until we go through this bump.
And again, with what you mentioned, you are seeing people that are interested in renting and buying. So there's a demand out there.
Absolutely. Because remember, we talked about earlier, the rental market was still slim back before Corona. So now, again, it's that supply and demand. People are, looking for rentals. My friend has one in Seminole Heights on Highland. He was doing Airbnb, making a killing. Of course, now he rented it out to 3 young ladies, and for a top dollar as well.
So that could be a solution then.
Right, for the meantime, right?
For the
Just
meantime.
to get us through.
And while you're continuing to look through some data, and please feel free to interject, as far as forbearances, would you also suggest, because I know each bank probably has their own policies. I know many people have taken advantage of the forbearances. You need to talk to your lender, correct, on like how to pay it back. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about it?
Well, I would say some people have to be careful because it does take an effect on your credit report, which then might hurt you if you're looking to maybe move in 6 months to a year. So definitely check with your lender and see how that affects your credit report. Or maybe if your lender for the mortgage might not report it, just great to check with the professionals for sure.
I heard that there are 3 questions that you need to ask. One, what you mentioned is make sure it does not affect your credit. Make sure it doesn't affect your interest rate,
right?
Like down the line. So that's pretty important. And also to find out when do you pay these 3 months back? Is it a balloon payment at the end? Which personally,
doesn't make any sense if they do that, right?
I don't think it makes. I don't think it makes any sense, because if you're not able to pay your mortgage, and then all of a sudden you have to come up with
that much at the very end.
Mhm.
What I've heard a lot of banks are doing is tacking it on at the very end of your loan. Is that what you're hearing as well?
I'm hearing some of that too, right?
What else are you hearing?
Or even with car payments, people that have their payment, they're getting 3 months and they're tacking it on to the last. They're adding 3 months onto their payment. So if it's a 5 year, it's a 5 year and 3 months, which makes sense.
We're going to have a video on soon with a financial advisor in town. His name is David Duquette, and he answers a lot of those questions and goes into more details on what we should do. But right now I'm talking to Stefanos
Right.
and the real estate market. So
Here's
you found
some good
something else?
information,
Okay.
just kind of from the company perspective. Again, Coastal's pretty big in the Pinellas area, and they're coming into South Tampa for sure, in the Tampa Bay area. So just give you an idea, April 6th, right? New contracts on the last 5 weeks.
Mhm.
So April 6th, $6.7 million.
Wow. And is that just in the Tampa area alone?
The
or is
Tampa
that
area.
Okay, all right.
And then you got to factor in April 13th, it went to 9.5. April 20th, 18 million. And April 27th, up to 19 million. And then now in the last 3 days, 36 new contracts, up to 16.5 million.
Wow.
So you can tell you that, people are still buying. I think they see the light at the end of the tunnel for this. Again, these are some prime neighborhoods, but I think from those stats, you see the market is bouncing back for sure.
So from April 6th,
you can take a look.
It went from April 6th, it went from 6.7 million to
Right.
April 27th to 19. That's incredible.
Right. And then
the last 3 days.
And our meeting was on Tuesday. No, Wednesday or Tuesday. Yeah, Wednesday or Tuesday.
I know all the days blend together.
Yeah.
So, okay, speaking...
So it kind of tells you, we're rebounding. It was low in April 6th because of the epidemic, but now people, I think, are seeing light that we're coming out of this.
Which is great. Great. So speaking of that, for people who have had closings and who want to buy property, how has that been working for you guys? I mean, do you meet them face to face? I mean, how does that, say someone, and I know we're in phase 1 right now, right? So we are having more face to face meetings and things like that. But
here we are right now.
Yes,
right?
Here we are right now. But how does that work with people? I mean, do you, how does it work?
So I would say everyone is different. There are too many variables out there. So for example, I was showing on Saturday on a property on Beta Bay and touch base with the list agent, find out what their instructions are and what the seller's comfortable with and what the buyer's comfortable with. And they just meet in the middle, whatever works for them. So this buyer on Saturday, I'm going to meet him there at the property, stay 6 feet apart. And I requested the list agent step outside. So there's less people in the house. So I think everyone is different.
Right.
What they would want and expect.
But people so open houses are no longer, right? For right now, or are there some?
I've seen some signs, yeah.
For open houses.
Sure.
And I honestly, there are open houses.
Mm-hmm.
There are some open houses. But so it just depends. You guys are following the social distancing and what people are comfortable with, right?
Right, what people are comfortable with, basically. And I'm trying to schedule one, not this weekend, but next weekend for myself as well.
So then people are requesting to see houses.
People will still come. In the midst of the virus, I had, right before the virus hit, I had one on Melrose in South Tampa, and I had about 10 people come through in 2 hours. Again, I had the doors open, lights on, so staying 6 feet apart. So you got to be respectful.
Right, absolutely. And because you guys are also considered essential employees. I mean, real estate is an essential industry. So to recap, you're saying that people should not be afraid to buy or sell.
Right. And then exactly, talk to your local agent, find out what the market is doing. This is a great time, especially if you want to get top dollar because the inventory is low.
So look for that. Also, there are open houses.
There are some open houses. They're here. And we had some brokers open where the agents are having their homes open so agents can come through. But, again, people are taking some precautions depending on the homeowner and what they request.
And if you opt not to have an open house, again, as you mentioned, then you just make the appointments, find out virtually what's comfortable. So have there been virtual home tours, speaking of that?
Funny thing is, I haven't had anybody. I mean, I just showed a property for a friend of mine, a rental just now. And, we're 6 feet apart, but they didn't ask for a virtual. Or maybe they just don't know we can do that. But with FaceTime and technology, it can be done.
But
and
that's interesting.
There are people that are doing that, though.
But that's interesting. Can you talk about that a little bit? So people are actually doing
face
virtual.
To face. Oh, yeah, they're doing virtual. Some people have 3D tours for their properties. So there's other ways you get exposure and take a look at the home for sure.
Can you actually sell properties that way though?
I've done that from
virtually
before this.
Right.
Even people from New York coming down here to buy. Just did some FaceTime with them, showing them the properties and the videos, and they just collect that data and they make their decision. But yeah, I've sold like that before.
Because it's interesting. I could see that happening. I'm just wondering if it's more prevalent now.
It's funny. I think the human touch is important,
Mm-hmm.
right? So people want to get in there, feel it, smell it, touch it, and see it for themselves.
I feel that way. I mean,
Right.
especially if you're buying a property and you're potentially
It's a big investment.
Yeah, and it's like one of the biggest investments of your life
Right.
is your property.
And I think maybe some other agents in the office say they go out to preview, and if it's a liking, they take a liking to it, then they'll schedule the appointment to go look at the property.
Oh, so that's
it's good preliminary work.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So are you guys doing more of that, would you say?
Some agents are, yeah.
Preliminary work.
Just getting some, lay the land with videos and FaceTiming before a client makes that actual appointment getting out there. So again, it just all depends on the client.
Now, I know at the beginning of this, and we're still in the midst of it, but it's very scary and you can be so nervous. Is this a relief for you to see that the real estate market is, for your own profession? It's your livelihood.
It's my livelihood, right? And, people that are new in the business might be hurting a little bit more. People that have their business here for a while, I think they're going to coast by okay. They'll be safe. Because again, I think from the stats of the company, we're rebounding nicely.
That's comforting to hear. All right, Stefanos August, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, everyone, for listening. In closing, paraphrasing one of my favorite poets, Ralph Waldo Emerson, go where there is no path and leave a trail. Thanks for listening to Trailblazer, everyone. I'm Sarina Fazan.
Very nice.